primary basics of hot air balloons are hot air rises in a fabric bag and lifts the balloon off the ground. But being a balloon pilot is more complicated than that.
I can't come back. I don't know how it works.
The way we steer the balloon is we use the currents up in the sky, the wind. So wind is much like water is on the surface of the planet, where water likes to seek the lowest point. So air is the same way, especially cold, dense air. So what cold, dense air wants to do is flow down a valley. So when we flew this morning, the predominant direction of the wind was actually coming from the west going towards the east. But if we stayed low enough, we stayed in that cold air mass, dense air mass, and we were able to follow the valley down. So we went the direction that was different from all the other balloons this morning. And we don't have steering wheels, so we can't turn it. So we just adjust our altitude to find the winds that are going to take us to the direction we want to go. Sometimes they're there, most times they're there, but sometimes they're not, because weather is is a lot to it, and so what is forecast isn't necessarily what we get, but we have to deal with what we get.
Sometimes hot air balloons will have to land in yards or someone's field, but it's unlikely that a hot air balloon will get completely lost.
I'm stuck in this hot air balloon! There's a plane coming!
Setting up the balloon is pretty straightforward. First, the hoses from the propane tank are fed up the sides of the basket and hooked up to the burner on top. Then the basket is tipped over on its side, and the fabric bag is clipped to the top of it. The crew will then lay out the fabric bag, and gas-powered fans will inflate the balloon, called a cold inflate. After the balloon is inflated enough, they'll turn on the flame in spurts to get the balloon and the basket upright. In order to become a balloon pilot, you must receive a license from the Federal Aviation Administration, much like flying a plane. There's a private certification and a commercial certification. Flying balloons is an expensive hobby, but the freedom of the open air and the fantastic views from above make it worth it for most balloon pilots.
When I was in high school, I worked for a pizza place called Garcia's Pizza in a Pan, and their promotions, one of their promotions was a hot air balloon called the Flying Tomato, and they would always bring the Flying Tomato to town, Ralph and Joe, the Flying Tomato brothers, and they would always look for crew people to help them set up the balloon, much like the crew here did this morning, and to set us up and pack us up. So I would help the Flying Tomato do that when Ralph and Joe came to town with the Flying Tomato. So I had moved away and was working as a paramedic in Springfield, Illinois, and a buddy of mine and I were doing what you're doing, is taking pictures. And we were out taking pictures, and we saw a balloon, and I said, "Hey, Mike, I used to do that. Let's go follow the balloon and see who's in it, and we'll help them pack up and things like that." And so we get up to the balloon, and lo and behold, one of the surgeons I knew from the hospital was there, and Dr. Baldwin, and I said hello, and he said, "Yeah, sure, you can help us pack up," and we sure enough did. And then I saw him a few months later in the hospital, and I say, "Hey, Doc Baldwin, how's the ballooning going?" And he says, "Walt, I think we're going to sell the balloon." So I bought the balloon, and what's unique about it is I bought the balloon never having flown in a balloon. So that's how sure that I was going to enjoy it, and I was going to adopt it as one of my passions, and it truly is a passion.
The Balloons Over Morgantown event continues this weekend until Sunday. Remember to say hello if you see a balloon floating overhead, and be kind to a pilot if you find a balloon in your backyard.